You searched for more. You wanted to become the best version of yourself. Your search is over. And the technology finally exists. To go beyond limits. Your time has come. Unleash your potential. AQ. Adaptive intelligence.
So we're ready to start streaming, so I'm going to let Flora take it over. All right, and so thank you guys for coming. And if you guys are online and you're seeing this for the first time, go ahead and click on our description. If you go to our hub, you'll see on Discord, we have our link down there. Obviously, you have to have Discord as the app on any device, and then you can also join us from there. Also, if you're on our YouTube, you can do the same thing in the description. So if you guys are in here, though, in Discord, go ahead and mute your mics, mute your microphone and your video, and we will get started. And make sure you click watch stream. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us for AQ Adaptive Intelligence Thinking Thursdays. So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting subject: healing versus healthcare. What's the difference? So if you were here a couple weeks ago, or if you watched our YouTubes, you'll see that we've got some new videos coming out. One of them is going to be Inner Honesty, Rules to Live By, and the other one is Choosing the True Pill, which both are very interesting topics, and I believe they'll help you out a lot. So definitely check those out, and let's move on to the discussion. So, healing versus healthcare. What's the difference? Well, that was a question that took me many, many years to really understand. And Let me just condense decades into minutes for you. Basically, the way I can sum it up is there's a difference in how you approach becoming healthier and living a better life. You can be reactive and wait till the last moment. I use the analogy of a car. You know, you can wait until your car is screeching at you and there's fire coming out of the hood, or you can do a little bit of maintenance and check up on it as you drive every couple hundred miles, put new fluids in, make sure you have enough gas and you don't run out. The body is kind of the same way. You can wait for it to basically scream at you and possibly fail you, or you can take care of it along the way. So there's lots of different ways to do that. If you're trying to build yourself up, it's more about proper nutrition, exercise, the way you think. But if you're not doing those things, chances are you'll be put on prescription drugs, you'll be on chemo or some kind of gene therapy, and you'll constantly be hooked up to all these machines that are just beeping at you saying that, hey, yeah, they're still alive for now. But that's no real way to live. If you really want to understand true health, you got to understand how the body actually functions and what it needs to be able to repair and to thrive. So a lot of people call these other methods of building yourself up alternative healing. However, that's a bit of a misnomer, because it's only an alternative if you weren't doing the right things in the first place. Meaning, if you don't do those things that are considered alternative, your only option then is to go to the medical doctor or to a hospital and to get all sorts of invasive procedures done on you because you didn't start off on the right foot. This is an enigma to a lot of people that are in the medical field, because they don't have this mindset of, oh, let me make the person healthier. It's more of, let me just make sure they don't die while they're in my care. You know, while I'm babysitting them, I gotta make sure they're not dead, and that's the best I can do. I saw this personally myself when I worked as a paramedic for a year. I also did pharmacy technician and caregiver. I basically did a lot in the healthcare field, and I saw a lot of tragedy unfold because health wasn't properly understood. So that's what started my own journey to trying to figure out what is actually health. So if you look back on history, this is a brief history on the medical profession. Back in the Middle Ages, we had plague doctors, which I feel we might need to bring back, or maybe not. But some of the things they did were, by today's standards, very barbaric. They would practice methods that were very questionable and yielded little to no results. For example, nowadays we have drugs and surgery, and it's as common as it was back then when they would have bloodletting. If you were ever sick, they would just say, oh, well, you have bad blood, and they would just cut you and drain you of your vital oxygen and nutrients to the rest of your body. It actually ended up being one of the things that caused George Washington to die. The physicians of that day thought bloodletting was good, and they would use leeches, cutting you and basically draining your life away, and they thought that was helping you somehow. But I'm sure people will say, oh, well, that's a historical reference. They don't do that anymore. Well, may I remind you that about 50 years ago or so, doctors were coming out saying, smoking is good for you. Smoking is fine. For example, this was some of the propaganda here, some of the commercials that doctors would be paid to advertise in. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. And they would go on and tell you about how good it is to smoke. There's a lot of these, you guys can look it up. This other one would say, not one single case of irritation if you smoke a Camels. So, interesting how they use the same verbiage as they do now, talking about cases and how doctors recommend this thing. But is it what's actually good for you? Or is it just what they're paid to say. Surely we've come a long way, right? I really love this picture here because with this whole COVID thing, maybe we should be using the old masks. I think it would give us more protection, right? I mean, it's way more covered. Makes you think, doesn't it? Have we really progressed? Some people compare the bloodletting to a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs. They say, well, back then they had leeches and they had bloodletting and all sorts of other myriads of very odd treatments. But now we have drugs, and drugs are magical and they help everything all the time. But we tend to ignore that it's the same companies, the same big pharma that pushed things like cigarettes or allowing doctors to endorse these sorts of things. They made all sorts of claims and millions of people ended up dying, not just from the cigarettes, but also from taking pharmaceuticals. Even when they were properly prescribed, they can be extremely dangerous. So one can start to question, is it really worth the risk? Is there a better, safer, more effective way that isn't going to ruin your life? Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, you're talking to me about some hippie type stuff. Or maybe you learned it from some crazy guru. Well, not necessarily. There's a lot of things that actually work that most people dismiss because they haven't done the research. But when you do the research, you can become a guru if you're willing to take the time to educate yourself. Now, it's not rocket science. We know that exercise, drinking clean water, and choosing to use natural supplements, natural products, natural food is way better than using the synthetic stuff. Now, going back to the difference between medicine and healing, the goal of medicine is to keep you at a baseline. They keep you alive, period. Now, that has its time and place. Say, if you're in a car accident and you've lost all your blood, or you broke a bone, if it's gonna keep you alive in that moment, sure, great. Do that, but know that if you're relying on that every single day, you haven't tapped into something even more powerful, which is healing. Because healing itself brings you above baseline. It brings you above the average. It's the difference between living a life where you have no passion and living a life where you're just ecstatic to be alive and you feel healthy. You do things that healthy people should be able to do. You get the result. So, some of the questions in my journey were, what actually heals people? What actually makes them not only feel better, because you don't want to just cover over symptoms, what actually makes them better? And I'm going to go into one of the best kept secrets in medicine. Now, how can we be sure that whatever it is that we're doing is actually working? How do we know it's not a leech or bloodletting? How do we know we're actually getting the result that we want? So, the secret to medicine, and it's the best kept secret, is that given the right conditions, your body can actually heal itself. Given the right conditions, the body heals itself. Just imagine if everyone knew that. Would we be letting all sorts of odd procedures be done on us like guinea pigs? Or would we take our power back? Would we take control of our health, take control of our life, and not be just another number? What would we do if we could test scientifically different procedures, different ways of being, different modalities of healing, and see what actually works on an individual case by case, meaning what works best for you? So here's my future prediction. In the future, AI is going to scour all of the medical research, all of the alternative medicine research, and every other healing modality that exists, and it will be able to show with evidence, with data, what actually helps people get better. And that'll be a huge advantage, not only for all types of different healthcare practitioners, but especially for people that are patients, especially for you and me, especially for your children, especially for your family, people that you care about. Using the scientific method and exploring the entirety of healing is going to be the future, and we will develop the tools to do it. For example, AI can monitor different biometrics within yourself. For example, your brain waves, lab work. It can detect what your gene sequence is. It can see how coherent your heart is, how healthy your heart is, how good your breathing is, how much oxygen you're getting to the different cells in your body. All this can be tracked. And a lot of the technology already exists, but it's just not integrated into a cohesive whole. In the future, you'll be able to get all of your data about the health and the status of your body from your phone. But how do I know? How do I know that? I've only been studying this for years upon years of my life. And one of the things that I love to study besides health itself is trends in technology. I love tech. That is the love of my life. So I can see these patterns arising, and I'm sure you can too. That is why in adaptive intelligence we have our NeuroHealing division, which specializes in using biometrics to biohack your body so that you can improve your health, your brain function, the entirety of your life can be improved. We use a multiple healing modality approach. So things like meditation, breath work, a healthy lifestyle, and nutrition. We combine all these things and more to help you be able to gauge not only where you're at, but where you can be. And we rely on research and biometric data to get us an honest look at what your health status is. I would love for everyone to be able to know objectively what their health actually is at. You know, it's very common when you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, how are you feeling?" They'll just say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm good." Even if they feel terrible, "Oh, I'm good." But what if you could get an actual number and say, you know, you're actually at a 34%. You know, let's talk about helping you get to the next level. You know, do you want to be at 50%, then 60%, then 70, 80, 90, 100? Is it possible to even go above 100 and to really live life? Those are the types of things that I believe will help humanity as a whole. Not just doctors, not just big companies, but everyday people. And the beauty of it is, people can track their own success. So you can take back your life. You can take back control of the number one thing that matters more than anything else in life. More than money, more than fame. Honestly, you could even say more than friends, because if you're not around, if you're not healthy, you can't enjoy your friends and they can't enjoy you. So your health is not only a service to yourself, it's a service to everyone you know. It's literally the most important thing in your life. So we should be able to have the tools to safeguard that, to optimize that. This way, you can unleash your greatness. You can become the best version of yourself, and when you do, you help everyone around you. So I would like to know from you, what have your past medical experiences been like? I know I've had some of my own. I'm sure you've had yours. What have they been like? What have your healing experiences been like? And if you're new and you've never tried it, give it a try. What would you like to try first? For AQ Adaptive Intelligence, we are going to be having healing retreats, and I highly encourage you to check that out. It's a nice way for you to experience different healing modalities from lots of different practitioners. And the beauty of it is before you start any of that, we'll use biometrics to show you where you're at so that you can know before and after, and we're even working on developing during that healing modality. And I would like to know also what seems similar between these two things, between healing and medicine, and what was different. Oftentimes people tell me that they can feel the difference. What does that difference feel like? What does it feel like to you? Listen to your body, pay attention. It's trying to tell you something. So I would like to know your thoughts. And I know you probably have stories. And they can be personal stories, and they can be deep stories. But they shouldn't be discredited. They should be heard. Because it just might change somebody's life. So thank you again for coming, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Adaptive intelligence. You searched for more. You wanted to become the best version of yourself. Your search is over. And the technology finally exists. To go beyond limits. Your time has come. Unleash your potential. AQ. Adaptive intelligence.
All right, and you can all come back. So if you guys are still watching on YouTube or Facebook streaming live, go ahead and join us. We're going to be talking a little while here, and then we're going to go ahead and cut into private discussion. But I'd like to open up the floor. What are some medical experiences that you guys have had in the past, and what was that like?
Well, I've recently been dealing with a gout flare-up. And what the doctors want to do is pump me full of a bunch of pills and say, hey, take these, this will heal you. As long as we get your pH level with this pill down to a certain level, you won't have the gout attacks. And that's what they keep telling me. Alexa, cancel timer. And that's their push. But they're not talking to me too much about, how. I actually had to ask my doctor. I was like, okay, well, I can definitely take these pills, but why is my body off? She goes, I'm sure it's your diet. I go, what do I need to do? Well, she goes, well, you need to eat more vegetables, more fruit, stay away from processed meats and, sausage, hot dogs, and all that other crap. So, okay, cool. But what kind of frustrated me is her first offer was pills. It wasn't, let's get to the bottom of this. What's your diet like? What kind of things do you eat? It was just, okay, well, you need to take this pill and come back in 3 weeks and we'll talk about it. So she has the information. She has the training, but she didn't offer that first. And that's a fundamental difference between what I get from AQ versus what I get from the doctors. Doctors want to treat the cause, the symptom. They don't want to treat the cause. I said that backwards. So to me, that's a huge thing, and that's not the first time I've had. The doctors wants to do surgery to fix my back. I talked to Gabriel, and he's teaching me how to breathe and how to adjust and move my back, and now I have the use of my legs again. I'm not in a wheelchair anymore. My arm went numb. Gabriel didn't want me to go and get the surgery. Like the doctors want to cut my neck open and take my bones and break them and do all this weird stuff. And Gabriel says, no, what you need to do is learn to start, moving your neck, and your body will tell you. Oh, see right there, just adjusting my neck. Gabriel taught me how to do that. He taught me how to listen to my body, and he taught me how to pay attention to those little things that I never knew how to do before. And now, every time my neck is sore or my arm feels like it's numb, I know how to adjust my neck. I just go over there and lift it, click, and it pops. And then about 5 minutes later, the numbness goes away in my arm. So, that's what I love about this natural healing. And you particular, Gabriel, because you've been spending, the last, some teen years, looking into this stuff and learning and studying, and you give this information away freely. And I think it's just amazing how you do this, because all the doctors, they won't even say, yes, can I help you, unless you have money that you've given them, And so, you do these free online things, and you talk to people on the phone like almost every day to help people. And I just think it's amazing. You're an amazing individual. This group is amazing, and all the people that come here are amazing. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's crazy how their first resort is definitely just like, whatever pays their bills first. It's more of like about convenience over truth and results, and that's a tragedy.
I don't know if I fully agree with that, and I'll tell you why. I asked my doctor that very question. It's like, why is it that I had to ask you about this? Why is that not the first thing you said? She goes, because that's my job. I go, what do you mean? She goes, if I want to have a practice and I want to have the insurance send me clients, I can't start natural healing. I have to sell drugs. That's my job. It's a job I chose. That's what's required of me. And in fact, if I don't do that, I can lose my license. And now I won't be considered a medical doctor. I'll be considered a homeopathic doctor. And it's a very different field, and that's not the field I'm. I go, but you know about this stuff. And she says, yes, of course I know about this stuff. That's my job. But that's not the field I'm in. If you want me to send you a homeopathic doctor, I'm more than willing to write you a referral. But that's not my job. So I don't know if I agree that they're all like here to cover their bills. I mean, in some way they are, because if they knew that homeopathic medicine was better, that's what field they can go into, and they didn't choose to do that. So in that way, I agree with you. But I don't think, at least my doctor, isn't just about that, because she does study it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like your medical doctor is more aware than most. Most are not even aware that would be the right course of action, is to clean up your diet versus, just take whatever pill. Like, I remember one time I was at the gym. This was a few years back, and I'm working out, and I see this older gentleman off in the corner, like struggling. He's like, literally, he has his hand clasped to his chest, like he's like doing this with his back, and he's like struggling to breathe. And I walk over him and I say, hey, I'm a formally trained paramedic. Are you okay? I can help you. And he goes, oh, no, it's okay. I'm a doctor. And I'm just kind of like, okay. That doesn't mean that you don't need help. So, I mean, I just made sure he was okay enough to, walk away. But like the level of, I don't even know what to call that, unwillingness to admit reality was just staggering. Yeah, and that really blew me away. And I think that's more of like a Western culture thing. A lot of my clients that I see here in Mexico are medical doctors, but they're medical doctors that are from Mexico, so they think differently. Like, they're more open and aware of other methods that work versus like more like Western docs, like what you're mentioning. They might not even be aware, or if they are aware, they keep it hush hush because they want to peddle to the insurance companies, which we know the insurance companies are owned by big pharma. So that's the tragedy, because a lot of people are getting bad advice because they don't know the actual truth of how to actually become better.
But medicine does help. With this gout attack I had, yeah, obviously I can clean up my diet, and it's years of neglect and why I've had this. But they did give me a pill, and the next day I was out of pain. I was like thinking about how I mean, seriously, I had so much pain. I was thinking to myself, what would it be like to live with one foot if I got it sawed off? I mean, that's the kind of pain I was in. It was just horrific. And literally, their pill did help. Now, I don't know if it was a chemical. I don't know what it was, but I literally would have given my right foot to take a pill. That was my thought process. So I think the pharmaceutical industry does have a place. Obviously, it shouldn't be the norm. Now that the gout attack is over, I need to clean my diet up so it doesn't come back and I don't need it again. Like you were saying, you in your video, if you break your bone, yeah, go get a blood transfer. Do what you got to do. I mean, it's now not a long-term thing. It's like you need some critical care right now, and that's what a gout attack is. When I had my back was all jacked up from my jet ski accident, I needed a cortisone shot. It took the pain from here down to here until the cortisone wore off, and I had to take another one. But I'll tell you what, I was literally thinking about jumping out of a fucking building. It was in so much pain. I needed to end it. And that gave me my life back, and it gave my wife her husband back. So it has a place, I think. What do you guys think? How about you, Sergio?
I'm glad you shouted me out there. Actually,
I felt it, brother. I felt it.
The way you described, talked about that actually reminds me a little bit of like the new kind of psychedelic renaissance. Is that like it's sometimes helpful to know that the other side is there, right? Like in the psychedelic sort of example, it's kind of like feeling like the oneness or whatever the ineffable, whatever people experience on the other side. And I think it's also like, for example, the cortisone shot resonates with me when it was the first time I had like a really debilitating like spasm in my neck, right? And I just kept going to the gym, and I didn't know it could be such a big deal. I had one of the physical therapists that we're all heard of, kind of try to mobilize it and stuff. He was like, dude, it's like really hard. It's like, dude, it's hard as a rock, like whatever. So finally I went to go get it checked out. And it was an orthopod that I went to in New York, but he came out of Stanford. So it was a cool dude. He was like a swimmer. He was a great guy, whatever. I really trusted him. And he mentioned the cortisone shot. And so
Alexa, set a timer. Oh, sorry, I forgot.
And I said,
I was muted. I'm cooking.
And I said, yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's kind of like a slippery slope with the cortisone shot. I don't want to like have to take it and then need it when it wears off. And that's kind of what I had heard. I'd never really experienced it. And he was like, oh, it doesn't have to be like that at all. He's like, usually people, it's one and done. I put it right in the trigger point. They feel relief, and you combine that with a little bit of like therapy. And usually it's not a repeat sort of thing, right? And so I was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot then, right? And so
I get it, unintended. Give it a shot.
Yeah. So so that's what we did, and it was cool. And I just tried to like hydrate and kind of do the things that I intuitively knew what to do, and it was great. But then later on, when I felt, and what had happened, and actually I was really desperate at that point too, because we were driving to the Super Bowl later, that like a few weeks later. It was like the Niners and the Ravens, and in New Orleans. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be like, in pain for that. And the doctor was like, but I had a spasm like that, and I was laid out in bed for like days. So here are your, here's what we can do, blah, 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 whatever. Worked that time. And then what I then began to do is like, I just kind of I did all the other things that I did in that case, like stretches and hydration. And I think I took like a yoga class or something like that. And I substituted the shot with like CBD, right? So sometimes I feel like these things could be like a bridge to let you know like that there's another side, but then once you know that other side is there, then you don't need that crutch or that bridge to get there. And that's where then you can, but I think for for a lot of us, it's helpful to just have like, you know, that hope or the experience of knowing that's there, and then learn how to kind of put together the pieces as to how to get there without depending on, you know, pharmaceuticals or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, so I hear you kind of saying that sometimes the mental knowledge of knowing there's relief has merit.
Yeah, like
I hear you
like
on that.
knowing, because I mean, if you don't even know that that's what it feels like to be pain free or whatever that the destination is, then whatever, maybe a pharmaceutical or a psychedelic or whatever it is helpful to get there. But obviously, you want to distinguish between like a bridge and a crutch, right?
Yeah, there's not a very strong line in that. I hear what you're saying on that. I was the same thing with me. Is when I injured my back, it took them almost 5 months before they had me diagnosed and treated. I was in pain, miserable, and
Yeah.
I would have given just about anything to have anybody just have me go like, "Hey, I know what it is." I mean, because it was just this unknowledge. I didn't know if my spine was broken. I didn't know what the hell was causing them such pain. I didn't know what it was, and no doctor could figure it out. And the insurance run around and have to try physical therapy before we can get an MRI and all that bullshit. When physical therapy hurt me even more, you know.
Right.
So I get what you're saying. That mental clarity sometimes is more valuable than just about anything, because when you're injured, a lot of times it's not just your body that's injured, but it's your spirit and it's your emotions and it's your hope. And that's half the problem. You know, like a lot of people, you know, I've been injured to the point to where I have no hope more than once in my life. So I hear you on that part. I think that's a very, very valuable distinction there. And you said that you found some hope through, you know, CBD, and I think you said psilocybin, the mushrooms.
And I mean, in that particular case, it was CBD, but I just kind of, for some reason, when you were speaking about cortisone and other, you know, it reminded me of just like how I feel the psychedelic movement is similar in that way, that it could be a bridge for people to know like what the quantum realm feels like or whatever it is, that does exist. So, you know, maybe the fact that we're just not like meat suits, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, sometimes like you know, and I know there's like this huge movement, for example, with like MDMA, right? I haven't taken MDMA in that sort of context with like where people are healing trauma. It's a big thing with like MAPS and you know, a lot of this, and it's amazing how they bridge that actually, because apparently Rick Doblin, his college roommate or something like that, ended up in the Pentagon. So it's kind of like the hippies pitched this thing to to the government, right? And so they kind of been getting like all through the Trump years. They didn't really touch the psychedelic movement, you know, because they bridged the two tribes with like using the hippies to help the soldiers. You know what I mean? And so and then finding out that like the soldiers are a lot of times don't even want to like continue with the second or third. I think it's supposed to be like 3 sessions or something, and a lot of times they just have like whatever the insight is once, and they're like, I'm good. I don't need to continue. And it's like a paradigm shattering thing, because medication has been kind of like a management tool to help them with PTSD and whatnot, whereas 1 to 3 sessions of like an MDMA assisted or like a CBT assisted MDMA session has been like basically like curing 66% of soldiers with PTSD. So it's like this paradigm shattering kind of intervention, and that's chemical, right? You know what I mean? But
So what is you said MDA? What is that?
MDMA? It's like ecstasy, Molly. It's like the pure form of ecstasy, like the party drug.
Okay, I've heard of ecstasy. Yeah.
So I mean, and I haven't, you know.
Yeah, Gabriel was talking about magic mushrooms, and he sent me this link, and I watched it, and it it was talking about there's a medical implication of magic mushrooms that can be very helpful as well. Apparently, it helps people break into different levels of mind thinking and stuff. Gabriel, feel free to join in and chime in and teach us what you remember. But he was saying that his next meeting or AQ retreat he wants to do over in Santa Cruz, where magic mushrooms are legal. And so I thought that was kind of neat.
That is really cool.
He was telling me he went. Go ahead.
You can establish new pathways in your brain that you wouldn't normally have access to when you're not in like an altered state of substance like that.
So you agree with it too, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Gabriel, why don't you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, before I head into the effects of like nootropics, like magic mushrooms, for example, I do want to reiterate like how we were talking before about medicine in general, and you were saying that like, oh, it's helped you in instances of emergency, and I totally get it. I mean, I was a paramedic. That's the same reason I was a paramedic for so long, is because emergencies happen. However, you can't treat everything like an emergency, because if you do, then you have long-term negative effects. And that was more of the point of the video, is to point that out and say, yes, if you're having a medical emergency and you're at the point of dying, if you don't do it, then absolutely go for it. But if, it's more of a chronic thing, more of an ongoing thing that's constantly affecting your life, and the only thing you're doing is drowning it with drugs, you're kind of missing the point of the existence of pain. Like, let me ask you this. Like, do you think that pain is a bad thing, Jeff?
My perception of pain has been a bad thing, because it's taught me to be like, the pain has taught me certain things. But no, I think God made pain for a very valuable reason, and it's something God made, and it's a beautiful thing that helps our bodies communicate with our brain. But you've helped me learn that, so I'm not a newbie anymore. So I'm kind of cheating. I'm right ahead.
Yeah, it's also by design. Like, the system is by design in that way. Like, you're meant to be stay sick or in pain, so that they can give you these masking agents, versus like you kind of preemptively, consuming the things that you should consume, or participating in the activities that you should be participating, to kind of be more on the preventative angle, and which is more cost efficient for the consumer, really, in the long run, versus like emergent care, which is, insurance companies love emergent care.
Yeah, and it's interesting to, like, if you study people, because there are people in the world, and you can look this up, there have been people that have not been able to feel any pain. And it's very interesting what happens to those people. And it's actually kind of tragic. People that don't feel pain, they end up having very short lifespans. Because think about it. If you can't feel that there's something physically wrong with your body...
No feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's no feedback, it's going to go untended to. So, for example, this happens a lot with diabetic people. Right? I'm not talking about the extreme examples anymore. You can look those up on YouTube or what have you. Those people just have short lifespans. But people that have, like, diabetes, for example, like type 1 or type 2, and type 2 is perfectly, like, you can fix that very easily with, having a proper diet, essentially. But what happens in diabetes type 2 is you start to get neuropathy. So diabetic neuropathy, you stop feeling your legs and your limbs. And so what happens commonly is you'll see that people start to get cuts on their feet, and they won't notice because they don't feel the pain. And then also, because there's diminished nerve flow to that area, their healing capabilities are diminished greatly. So now you have a problem where you can't feel it and you can't heal it. And so what happens? You get an infection. And then so they don't notice it. They have an infection, and it gets so bad to the point to where it goes septic. And if it starts to go septic, it goes to the entire bloodstream, and then it literally kills the person. So what they have to do in a lot of cases, and I've seen this a lot working as a paramedic, is people that have diabetes that are missing limbs, like they have no legs, or they have no legs and no arms. It's really tragic.
Let me comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was actually in the hospital with diabetes, and she has to give herself injections, and she's never been taken seriously. Fuck it. I've been living my life this way. I'm not going to stop. Fuck it. If I got to eat that baby food junk shit, I'd rather die. That was her attitude. And her brain shut down. She couldn't think. We put her in the hospital. and she had a roomie that also had diabetes, and he had the same attitude, and both of them were going back and forth. All this is just a bunch of bullshit and ways for doctors to make money, right? Because that's a common thing we think. Well, his foot went septic. They took it off. He came back missing a foot, and it fucking scared the shit out of her.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, that's the reality.
And now she's taking it seriously. And she's literally like eating healthy now. And my brother took her to a nutritionist, and she learned a whole new eating style, even though she's cheating and shit. But, you know, at least she's taking her insulin now. But she's getting better. She was like insulin after every meal. Now she's insulin once a week. So she's getting better because she's eating more healthy. So I've been learning too, because I'm pre-diabetic. So I don't buy candy, sugars, and cookies anymore. So back to your point. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what I mean. Yeah, like, you know, if it's a chronic thing, then you want to find out what the cause is, not just treat the symptoms, because then you're going to have that problem where you're going to end up missing a leg one day and you can't get it back. You know, science is not at that point where we can grow limbs yet. What?
Actually, we can. There's a guy who actually grew an ear on the back of his own ear with his own cell on the back of a mouse, and it was surgically attached to him. So, but that's kind of just a flap of skin and cartilage, so that's a little bit different than an eye or something. But they're actually doing it with that T cell research. It's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too is, like, yeah, even if we could get to that point, we could completely regrow limbs. That still doesn't prevent you from dying from a diabetic coma. You know, so it's still that even if you could do miraculous things like that, there's still consequences. And ignoring them.
Well, with my back being bad, I've been looking into growing these companies who can grow new, like, vertebrae and different things like that, and actually implant them. And there's companies doing that right now, but those surgery is like $3 million, and no insurance is going to cover that. So you better be rich, bitch.
You better have all the cryptos at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, so I would like to. You also mentioned the magic mushrooms. Very interesting with that is that there's very few things in the world that have been proven to make you smarter. For example, like eating blueberries has been shown to make you smarter. Magic mushrooms and a lot of nootropic mushrooms have that effect too. And what they do is essentially they help you establish new neural connections from neuron to neuron. So a good example to look at with that is when Einstein died and they took his brain against his will. They took his brain and they were studying it to see what was the difference between his brain and a normal brain, right? They found that he didn't have more brain cells. His brain wasn't bigger. His brain was actually smaller. But he had way more white matter, and the white matter is the connections between cell to cell. So magic mushrooms and a lot of other nootropic mushrooms allow you to establish new neural connections. And so it does make you smarter, or at least it helps you bring together knowledge that you already have and actually synthesize it into something that's useful. I'm sure a resident mushroom expert here, Everett, could probably touch on that a little bit more. Would you like to say something about mushrooms, Everett?
Oh, that was Everett. It wasn't Les. My bad. Hi, Everett.
Hello, gents. Forgive me if I don't sound super excited. Long story. So the reason why mushrooms affect us so differently is because we have like 50% more, like our bodies match up with mushrooms 50% more than they do any other species on the planet in terms of being edible for food. So if you look at like meat is about a 10% chance of synthesizing it. Plants are 30, mushrooms are 50.
Wow.
So when you eat a mushroom, your body recognizes more components of it faster and can assimilate it to do many different things that it can't necessarily do from other things, such as meat.
I didn't know that. Thanks for teaching me that.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard that as well, that we're more closely related. Like, it's basically like walking fungal bodies. We're like more closely related to mushrooms than we are to anything else, and than they are to plants or basically they're like the oldest organism that has ever existed, and they keep it's like the whole rebirth cycle. It begins and ends with the mycelium.
It's true. That is correct. Our DNA matches up with mushrooms better than it does any other food that we get.
Yeah, actually, mushrooms
Yeah,
use the
all
same. Most mushrooms, they'll use the same neurotransmitters that you see in the human brain. So that's how they're actually able to, actually communicate. If you study, there's a certain type of ant where it'll actually infect the brain of the ant, and it'll basically like mind control it to do its bidding. It's very fascinating. But yeah, mushrooms definitely can interact with neural systems because they're very similar to the human neural system as well.
You're talking about cordyceps mushrooms.
Yep, cordyceps. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How the hell do you remember all these names? Jeez, you guys are crazy.
Cordyceps mushroom grows unlike any other mushroom because it actually uses bodies to do it. So what cordyceps mushroom will do is it will spread through a spore in the air and contaminate another living thing, which most of the time is an insect. And then it will link up to the brainstem of that insect and infect its whole entire brain and control the nervous system, and will make that insect go around other insects to spread it. And when ants recognize that one of them is being controlled, they gather up that ant, they take it out, and pretty much kick it out of the colony. But what the ant that's infected does is it climbs to the tallest tree or branch, and then the mushroom literally comes through the skull of the ant and blooms and spreads more spores to infect as many other insects as possible. That's including moths, bees, hornets, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the infection?
The purpose of the infection is to spread the mushroom itself, because that's how it lives.
Talk about the ultimate biohacker. Mushrooms are powerful. So yeah, so with that, for everybody that's still watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, if you want to join in, we're going to start our private conversations. So we go more in depth and we talk about more secretive things. So if you're into that, go ahead and click on the description and join us on our Discord. If you click on our hub link, you'll see it down below. Click on Discord for this recording, for this current live. And if you want to check out our other videos, go ahead and do that on YouTube. So we're going to go into a little bit more private stuff here. So let's go ahead and end the stream, and I'll see you guys next week for our next episode. All right, you guys. So